as the eye, if therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will hold to the one and despise the other.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. And we're continuing in the book of Hosea. We're almost at the end of chapter 2. And, just a note, I did change something last night with my streaming, and maybe it won't cut out at the end. We'll see. We'll just have to see, since it takes an hour for the problem to happen. Okay, where am I? Okay, there we go. And it shall come to pass in that day, I will hear, saith the Lord. I will hear the heavens, and they shall hear the earth. And the earth shall hear the corn, and the wine, and the oil. And they shall hear Jezreel. And you remember Jezreel means... Yeah, let's just read the next verse. Just adjust this so I know where it ends. And I will sow her unto me in the earth, and I will have mercy upon her that hath not obtained mercy. And I will say to them which were not my people, Thou art my people. And they shall say, Thou art my God. Okay, so this is after the promise of restoration. And I should say, I was thinking about this restoration. It's not an in the prophecies of the Old Testament, it's not an individual thing. As far as, God promises restoration. It may come. In fact, like in the Exodus, the generation that left Egypt, all save a very few, never saw the promised land. They never made it. They were overthrown in the wilderness, principally because when God told them to enter the promised land, they refused because they were afraid due to reports of giants. And since they would not obey the Lord, and since they were fearful that, all this is it, God who brought us out of Egypt did all these wonders for us, now he's going to destroy us. He did that just to destroy us in the end. He was wroth. He said, You will not enter into my rest. I swore in my wrath they would not enter into my rest. And so they all died in the wilderness, but their children entered in. When it comes to Israel, the promise is national. Although they are judged as individuals, let's say that. They're judged as individuals, but when he promises restoration, it doesn't necessarily mean that the people who committed all the sins that got them cast out in the first place are going to be restored. What it means is, though they've been judged as a whole and thrown out as a whole, he will also restore them as a whole, at least a remnant. The prophets often say, though Israel be as the sand of the sea, yet a remnant shall return. So, when that time of faithfulness returns, he says, I will hear And they say, you shall know the Lord, and I will hear. I will hear the heavens, and they shall hear the earth. And I think this is kind of like a, there's like a dual meaning here, because the end is the mention of Jezreel, which has two meanings: to sow and to scatter. And there's this idea here of rain, I believe, and in produce and crops. I will hear the heavens shall hear the earth shall hear the corn, and the wine and the oil. And the corn and the wine and the oil shall hear, God will sow. Because that's the positive end of it. Remember, God will scatter had to do with their destruction. God will sow had to do with them being planted again. And the corn and the wine and the oil are symbolic of, the blessings God gave to Israel. He used it before when it says, she says, I will go after my lovers who gave me my corn and my wine and my oil. And here, he's promising to hear the heavens, and the heavens. What is he hearing from the heavens? And the heavens hear the earth, and what does the heaven hear from the earth? Well, I assume the corn and the wine and the oil, what would they crowd to the earth for? For the rains to nourish their roots, or for the earth to let them bring forth fruit. The earth is going to help. The earth helps the crops bring forth fruit. It's from which they take their nourishment. And the earth calls out to the heavens for rain. And the heaven calls out to God to, let us rain. And that is an analogy of prayer also. There are times when God, certainly, not just times, it very often seems as if God doesn't hear your prayers, Something's wrong with my chair here. There's times when it seems that God does not hear, and we pray and the heavens are brass. It seems like there's no piercing, if you're still thinking in that sort of vertical kind of prayer. Though, through the Lord Jesus, we have a much different relationship with God when we're, it's more of an eye to eye, because he became a man, and then he sent his Holy Spirit, which dwells within us. So the one you're praying to is like right here. There's no distant heavens. But even then, it's like, if we don't listen carefully, we may not hear what he says. But I do believe as a Christian that God will speak to us. Though sometimes it's like, sometimes I can't hear. I want to know what God wants from me. Which way he wants me to go. What am I supposed to be doing? And it's not always obvious what the answer is. In fact, sometimes you have so many directions you could go, and none of them seems superior to the other. But one thing for sure, the corn and the wine and the oil is the basic blessings used and it refers also to certain symbolic elements. Wine and oil having to do with, I don't know, because they talk about, there's different things that come in, like the fig tree is often mentioned, and oil. And I've heard, oil referring to spiritual blessings, but I think of it in terms of the oil was used to anoint the king. And the wine is used for the cup wherewith we make blessings. Meaning, in the Old Testament, they would drink two things. And they would pour out drink offerings to God also. And there was also the idea of the meal offering. But there's also the idea of just the drink being part of the blessing. Because and even in Christianity, we use it for communion, right? And the corn, it's not like the corn we know, like corn on the cob, obviously. But it means grain. They would have like a grain offering and stuff like that. But of course, when we have communion, there's the bread and the wine. And Christ is the anointed. And anointed means one who has oil poured on their head, literally. And so, when the corn and the wine, when they hear Jezreel, what is that saying? They're hearing that God will sow. God will bless. Because he that sows should sow in hope. He that reaps should reap in hope. Meaning they have an expectation that they're going to gain from what they work at, from what they do. And God hears the heavens and the things we send heavenward, so to speak. The prayers that go up. I will sow her, meaning Israel, unto me in the earth. And I will have mercy upon her that hath not obtained mercy. Remember, there was the symbolic child, lo ruhama, not mercied, and lo ami, not my people. I need a drink of water. And so then, nation which he had scattered, then he gives promise, I will sow, I will reconstitute the nation, I will replant the nation in their land. I will be merciful to them again. And it's like a generational thing, I said, because the people who were responsible for Israel being taken out of the land, a lot of them are dead at that point. They're either killed in the wars, in the captivities, or they become absorbed among the heathen. He's speaking of a remnant because, it's like with Abraham. Israel's the children of Abraham, right? Well, they're the children of Isaac, actually. And Abraham had more than one son. He had several sons. There was Isaac, but then he had Ishmael by Hagar, and several other sons by Keturah, Midian, and the others. I always just remember Midian because the Midianites have some intersection with Israel over time. So, but they weren't God's people, though they were sons of Abraham. And though people may be sons of Israel, they're not all God's people. If they cast off his covenant, if they do wickedly, God does not you're still, hey, I'm still going to look out for you because you got the right pedigree. That's not how it works. To them belong the covenants, and so to them belong the responsibility that goes along with that covenant. Just like to us, you want to be a Christian? You want to put your faith in Christ? There's a responsibility that goes with that, Paul said, I want to present you as a chaste virgin. If that's not a responsibility, I don't know what it is. You have to be presented chaste and pure and virgin, Only by the power given us through Christ's blood can we even think of that as a possibility. But even so, it implies that it's not just about your past sins. But once you become a Christian, we have to begin to live in faith. I will betroth thee to me in faithfulness. Putting your faith in Christ is like a betrothal. Now it's like a promise. God made promises to us And our faith is also a promise to him. That we believe in you. It doesn't mean, I believe you exist. That's how people get screwed up, is I think it means you believe he exists. Doesn't mean you believe he exists. It means like you trust, you rely, you believe in him. That's a far different thing. I mean, I could believe some. I'm trying to think of somebody. I don't want to get somebody untrustworthy, well known. I believe they exist, but I don't trust them. That's the difference. So, thou art my people. I shall say, thou art my God. There's a reciprocal. It's not just thou art my people, and they just go and do their thing. They acknowledge that he is their God, because having a God is a big deal. It's not just, I believe he exists. No, he's my God. He is my ruler, my overlord, my governor. The one who sets the things in my mind are set in order according to the dictates of my God. Because people have passions, desires. And what God says is certain things you have to control. Certain things you have to, learn to. The idea is that we could become more like him and enter into life. Because the things which bring about death are all the evil that we do that comes of our own desires and passions and lusts. So Hosea 3. Then said the Lord unto me, Go yet, love a woman, beloved of her friend, yet an adulteress, according to the love of the Lord toward the children of Israel, who look to other gods and love flagons of wine. Now, I'll tell you right now, when I read this, and I, like I said, I looked at some images of Hosea, and I thought, I don't think they quite get it. Because and I'm not saying he didn't have affection for her, but what I'm saying is, this isn't about affection. They always show these pictures of him like holding his wife, the prostitute, and he's like cuddling her, and that's great. But what it is, he loves her by doing kindness to her. I've often said, and it's something one of my favorite sayings, I think, that love is not what feels good, it's what does good. When you do good to someone else, that's love. At least in the biblical sense of certain words. Romantic love is an entirely different animal. It's not wholly unrelated, obviously. But you don't love your enemies romantically. You love them by doing good to them, by being kind to them, by being patient with them. That is love, And that is the first kind of love we need to have towards our actual spouses and stuff. Because romantic love is not reliable, generally speaking. Like, that can go up and down. And the thing is, you can have a long-term romantic love, but, yeah, I certainly do. But, it does not, if it's founded on that, and that's all it really is, that's precarious. Because people do things to hurt each other, they do things to upset each other. I mean, his wife is an adulteress. I really am a little bit confused about this first verse. I think it should be obvious to everyone. What it says there is a little confusing, right? Go yet, love a woman beloved of her friend. And I remember I had a note in my own Bible that said that referred to Hosea. And maybe it's just a weird way in Hebrew of saying it. The word her is in brackets, and I'm looking in Bible Hub. You know, yeah, I'll show you what I'm doing. It's because it's boring when I just start looking at other things, and you can't see what I'm looking at. But now you can. Bible Hub, I love it. Great little website. Huge website, actually. And, I can highlight these words. You can't see it, but if you were on this page, like right now, you'd see what the underlying words are. And it highlights the words according to, like, go with me is actually one word in Hebrew. Whatever. That can't be right. Unto me go. Sometimes there's mistakes, by the way. Anyways, because it's not always obvious, because they're not always contiguous. That's another thing. It's like, I know from, I had a Bible that did a similar thing, but it was very clunky, old-fashioned. It just had the numbers above the words, and you had to flip in the other book. Yeah, if I wanted to do this before, I needed literally 3 different books to do it. 2, sure, but I used 3 because I had a separate dictionary. So I'm gonna say, like, okay, let's try a different translation, huh? Let's see what the New American Standard says. Okay, now they say, go again and love a woman who is loved by her husband, yet an adulteress. That fits a little better. Her friend is her husband. No, there's no Strong's numbers in any other translation, unfortunately. But I guess that's the nature of it. So she's beloved of her husband. And that's what my notes said. I'm not an expert, so I'm going to go with what my notes said, which is, it means friend, companion, or fellow. At least that's what the strict definition of the word. It's not a technical word for husband. See, that's the thing, is like in the King James, they'll just let it be awkward and let you be like, what's that mean? In other translations, they'll just say husband. So it's, and that's why I do prefer the King James, because it tells me where the weird stuff is. And sometimes they make mistake in that translation. They'll mess it up. But the thing is, it always sounds kind of, it makes you start thinking like, well, what's that mean? And then you look into it and you're like, oh, this is kind of a strange thing. And they didn't try to conceal stuff like that. Or what it is I think they don't try to, modern translations have this tendency to want to simplify it for you. Because they, that's why I wouldn't recommend teaching from a simplified translation unless you're already an expert who knows, who can just remember, who's not going to forget that husband friend thing there. Though actually, in Hosea, it's a verse that actually is one that I just remember. I just remember it because it's odd. And in many books, there's verses like that I remember. Maybe I'm approaching that level of remembrance where I could teach from from a translation other than the King James, but I prefer not to. Like I said, it's like having your hand held. It's like having someone being like, okay, we're just going to not talk about that. It's their husband. We're interpreting it for you. Because there could be other meanings. None strike me offhand, though. Her husband loves her, but she's an adulteress. According to the love of the Lord toward the children of Israel, who look to other gods and love flagons of wine. They like to get drunk and worship other gods. Wine, it's not so much about getting drunk, it was what it represents. The drinking of wine, of course, represents celebration, parties. They like to relax and have their wine and and revel and have a good time, right? Often it is with adulterers and adulteresses. They go out and they drink. They go hanging around in bars when they should be at home with their spouse. But maybe their spouse, there's some, I don't know. I never had, I like being home with my wife. I never felt like I wanted to go someplace else, So, there's this unreciprocated love. He wants what's best for her, and I'm still sticking with that. Because that is the prime, a husband who loves his wife, takes good care of her, does kind things to her, is generous to her, is generous with her. That's a little different. And there could be, and of course there can be affection blossom in that. But the love of the Lord, there is affection, but it is about the blessings he bestows upon them. He gives them the increase of their corn and their wine and their oil. And they love the blessings, but they look to other gods. So I bought her to me for 15 pieces of silver and for an homer of barley and half a homer of barley. I gave some silver, and I forgot how much a homer is. A homer and a half. I remember it's like, you have a bushel that's big, like a basket. A homer is a smaller amount. I'm just looking at this again. Where is... Yeah, I know it's a dry measure. It's literally Comer. Whatever. The amounts don't matter as far as I know. Maybe there's some symbolic meaning behind the amounts. 15 pieces of silver and 1.5. 15 is an interesting number because it is like a 1.5. It's a 1.5, isn't it? 10 and 5 is 1.5. And then homer and a half is 1.5. Which makes me think of, it's like 2 1.5s, and 15 times, 15, if I had 2, if that represents 1.5, and it's basically 2 1.5s, that's like 30. I don't know the value of a homer and a half, a homer of barley. And if I look at it at that end, that's like 3. If it was 2, but it's almost like the half of the price that it was to buy Christ. It's not half though. Half is 30 pieces of silver. I don't know the value of a homer and a half homer of barley. Probably not as much as 15 pieces of silver. That seems a bit much. So for $15 and some change, essentially, I said unto her. So he bought her. So what does this mean that he bought her? And when it says beloved, see, he had loved her. And she played the harlot, as they say. And obviously this got her into trouble. And she found herself sold, or in debt, or whatever, or in captivity, or who knows. Who knows, That's the thing, is people get into trouble. They live foolish lives, unmindful of the dangers of the world. 1 minute you're partying, the next minute you're being trafficked. 1 minute you're hanging out with some people you think you're friends, the next minute they've slipped you something in your drink, and your mind, they give you some drug and you're in La La Land, and they're leading you places where you would rather not go into dangers you don't even see coming because you're foolish. And the analogy using a woman is actually very apt. Humanity represented by the female here, because it only happens to women generally. I was a very handsome young man, and I didn't get a lot of attention though. I had a couple old ladies came up. My wife never likes these stories, but she laughs at it. It's funny. But oh, you're so handsome, and stuff like that. I had that happen a couple times. But, they don't treat you the way beautiful young women, they get a lot of attention. There are a lot of people willing to do a lot. I mean, well, that's willing to do a lot. They're not willing to do much, but they will definitely shower them with attention and show interest in them and like, oh, you're really something. When a beautiful young woman gets attention, because men are looking to bed them, essentially. Men, it doesn't happen that way. Nobody pursues you to bed you, no matter how good looking you are, unless there's some weird. That's rare. That's just not the way it works. And so at least certainly not generally speaking. Generally speaking, this is what happens. So a young woman is pursued, and so that attention can be addictive. It can become very exciting to have people paying attention to you, people flattering you, people they want you, and that's how Israel feels. I'm so blessed. Everyone wants to please me. Everyone wants to give me gifts. The heavens rain blessings upon me. I love, and then I go out and I drink and I party and all my friends and my lovers are there to buy me drinks. Everyone loves to buy me drinks because they want to get you drunk, so your senses are gone, so you can behave foolishly. So I said to her, anyway, so something bad happened along the way. It doesn't explain exactly what. It's like Israel being carried into captivity, carried into slavery. So she was carried into some sort of captivity, slavery. Suddenly she owed for all those drinks. What? Somehow she got caught up in her own wonderfulness, playing around with her lovers and thinking, oh, I can just run up a tab myself, and the house won't, count it against me. All of a sudden she's in debt. Her husband threw her out. Her lovers have disappeared. And now you are now a servant. So her husband goes and buys, and now she's fallen. That's the thing. She's fallen. She's realized, oh, I'm not so wonderful. Or at least they wanted something from me, and now they got it, and they don't care about me. They got what they wanted, and they left. And now the one who originally loved her and blessed her and gave her things that she took for granted and ran after other lovers, and the analogy is to God. He originally loved Israel, blessed her, but she ran after other gods and also looked to the heathen to protect her. That's another thing that didn't come up yet in Hosea, but comes up in other prophets. I look to the gods of the heathen. So now Hosea buys her back for this price. And I said unto her, thou shalt abide for me many days. Thou shalt not play the harlot, Thou shalt not be for another man, so will I also be for thee. You know, you're going to stick around. You're not going to go running around playing the harlot. You're not going to be for anybody else. You belong to me. Now, a lot of women don't like this relationship, you know. They don't like the idea that they belong to their husbands. But, you know, I do believe the reciprocal is also true, that the husband belongs to the wife. You know, that's what Paul taught. The wife does not belong to herself but to her husband. And the husband does not belong to himself but to his wife. And so the prophet also said, I will also be for you. You will abide. You will be faithful. You will not be for another man. I will not be for another woman. I will be for you. We're going to have this relationship right now. For the children of Israel shall abide many days without a king, without a prince, without a sacrifice, without an image, without an ephod, and without a teraphim. Wow, good job, Paul. Okay. Let's see what we got here in some of these words. Teraphim. A kind of idol, perhaps a household idol, and that is a transliteration from the Hebrew, meaning it's in Hebrew it's teraphim. Ephod is, I believe, I thought it was, oh gee, they don't say what an ephod is. First of all, I don't know, an ephod. Is that a measure? I don't know if I know what it is. Okay. Okay. I thought it was a hat. Okay, and I think it is. Okay, here they say it was a priestly garment, a shoulder cape, or mantle. For some reason, I thought it was like the hat they wore, like a pointy hat or something. Because here's some references of it. Okay, I'll show you what I'm looking at again. See, this time in Bible Hub, I clicked. I should get them to sponsor my Bible station. That's what I should do. Oh wow, that looks weird. I'll show you. Oh, stopped it. Okay. Here we go. When I click on the word for ephod, I get here. It's the Strong's number. That's the word, and it gives some Strong's concordance definition. An ephod. Thanks. Great. From an unused word, so there's no root to go. Right? Ephod. Thanks. Because we all know what an ephod is, and that's got all this stuff. And what I found here, they say a girdle, specifically the ephod of the high priest's shoulder piece. Also, generally an image. Great. That's those things don't make sense together. I'm sorry. But what's interesting here is I find stones for the ephod and for the breast to be set in the ephod and the breastplate. Stones in setting the ephod, the breastpiece, a breastpiece and an ephod and a robe, a breastpiece and an ephod and a robe. So there's like the breastpiece, the ephod, and the robe. So I mean, it's somewhere in there. I guess it could be like sort of like some connection to the top part of his garment. Okay, that's contextual definition, and I think that's reasonable. I haven't done that. So I wonder if I could see what was. All right. That's interesting. Oh, that's weird. Wait. Yeah, that's just bizarro. Every time that happens, it freaks me out. Okay, I just wanted to the infinite regress. Okay. And when I switch screens, it happens over and over again. And every time it happens, it kind of like, it's like, I don't know if it's just like a mirror looking at itself or something. It's just, all right. There we go. All right, so they shall abide many days without a king, without a prince, without some sort of ruler. Prince doesn't necessarily mean like the heir to the throne, but it's like some sort of lesser noble. Without a sacrifice, without the temple sacrifice, or without the the children of Israel were not in the habit of going up. It was rare that someone was faithful to go up to Jerusalem, because it was technically against the law in Israel to go down to Jerusalem, because that's why Jeroboam, the original Jeroboam, set up the 2 golden calves, one in Samaria and one in Dan, right? I think that's correct. There was golden calves set up in 2 places in Israel. That's true. Like I said, this is general. This is knowledge over. A lot of this I learned a long time ago, unfortunately. So, but maybe we should go through Kings, and then we can all understand the history of Israel really good. We might do that. I do enjoy the Kings, but it's going to be a lot of reading and less commentary. But right, right, without a sacrifice, without an image, without an ephod, and without a teraphim. Different kinds of sort of religious things here. Now, the sacrifice, the image. They were told never to make graven images, but they went and they did that. So he's saying they're going to spend a lot of time. They're not going to have a king. They didn't have the king, the heir of David, anyways. They had a succession of basically assassination successions. Several dynasties that were like 2. It's like a guy and his son, and then that guy got killed, then a guy and his son, that guy got killed. Then a guy, his son, his grandson, and then his great-grandson, and then he got killed, and then there was just a chaotic series of overthrows. So they had not, but they would abide many days without any of these sort of things. They'd have nothing. No image, no ephod, no priestly, whatever. It could refer to an image. I think that's why in the definition they said, or more generally to an image, to an idol of some sort. Though the priest had an ephod, and so they said, I think because of this verse, they think ephod could also mean some sort of image. I don't know, because the breastplate and the ephod, maybe there was some carving on the breastplate, or a piece that was carved on it. I don't know. I know there was a carving for having the gems in the breastplate. They had to be set in something. It was not wrong to have carvings and such. I mean, or things shaped. It was just you could not make images of birds and beasts and the fish of the sea and all that to bow down to worship them. But as far as like the ark had the carvings of the cherubims above it, and also. So there was ornate work and carving like that was not, image was meant to be a representation of something that was supposed to be a god. That was what was forbidden, not all, because the temple itself had carvings on it, not of gods obviously, but of designs and such. Ephod without a teraphim. So they're gonna, to me, that means they're gonna forsake their graven images. They're gonna abide without these things that they were accustomed to. And so in her, it was like she'd played the harlot. The analogy. She played the harlot, and now she sort of found herself in trouble, and now she's doing, instead of partying and sleeping around and being irresponsible, she is compelled into servitude and scrubbing pots and doing whatever. I imagine like a scullery maid. She's doing all the dirty work. Whatever. It doesn't say exactly, obviously, but maybe she's been sold into prostitution. Because that's the thing. It's like, when a girl is irresponsible, loose, and gets into trouble and hangs around with the wrong people, she can find herself drawn into that world without intending to be into that world. You can be sold into it, even in this time, Like you have some friends, they give you some drugs, they bring you someplace, and then and you don't realize it, but a bunch of people just paid to have sex with you. You didn't realize it was coming. It happens to people. And so, and through that, she's not her own person anymore. And so she abides many days. So Israel, in this representation, like her, now, she's not being fawned over. She's being treated like the horse she played, or whatever, or like a servant. All those things. There's all kinds of ways to serve and be humiliated and demeaned. This is what happens to Israel. They don't have a king. It's like they're not a nation anymore. They don't have a sacrifice. They don't have images. All the things that they thought were blessing them are gone with the blessings. Their king is gone. Their princes are gone. The sacrifices they make, they can't afford sacrifices anymore. They can't make graven images anymore. And certainly the corn and the wine and the oil is taken away. All there's left is brutal service to cruel masters. Afterwards shall the children of Israel return and seek the Lord. Return and seek the Lord their God, and David their king, and shall fear the Lord in his goodness in the latter days. Now, it could mean the latter days of the end of the world, or he probably means in the end of this prophecy. I used to always key in on that, in the latter days, but I do think of this in these terms. The children of Israel, after the Assyrians took them captive, there was never again a nation of Israel. It was always the kingdom of Judah. But I have always said that there was a remnant of returnees. It was always promised there would be a remnant of returnees. And in the New Testament, I should have looked this up, but I will, before we finish this book at some point, I will remind myself to look up just a couple examples of people in the New Testament who are Jews, who are of Israel. Because in the ministry that started teaching me the Bible when I was a teenager, I was 19. I started studying the Bible seriously, and I found the Shepherd's Chapel, which is like a late night TV ministry where they teach the Bible line by line. He's got the scripture at the bottom like I do. I totally ripped off his, he's not the only guy who does that. But anyways, it's the same kind of thing. You got the Bible at the bottom, and then someone's explaining it. I like that. That's why I do it, because it was something that was important to me at that time. Only problem was the teachings were very, a lot of them were very questionable, and even more of them were quite wrong. I say, well, don't you? People always will say, don't you think didn't he get anything right? It's like, well, Jesus crucified, yeah, it's all right. Even that he messed with Jesus a lot in many ways too. That's what I don't want to get deeply into that, but the one issue I want to make clear: why do I say the things I say about Israel? Because they always made this distinction. Well, the kingdom of Judah in the south is the Jews, and that's the tribe of Judah and Benjamin. They might remind us that Benjamin was also present, like Paul the Apostle was of the tribe of Benjamin. So in the south was Judah and Benjamin. In the north was the other 10 tribes. Which also mentioned in the south was Judah and Benjamin and Levi, because the priesthood was present in Jerusalem for the most part at the central location, though priests were to go out among all the people also. So Levi was kind of scattered among the tribes, but certainly there's a large contingent of Levi in Judah. So it's kind of 3 tribes. But that right there tells you right there. The fact that they call it the 10 tribes in the north and the 2 in the south, or they just call it 1. And they were called Jews because it's short for Judah. Is what the people, Judah, Jew. They became Jews. You know, that because that's people hear their name and they shorten it. And, but that was a political distinction. Always was. Judah was the kingdom of Judah, the political, it was the political division, the land of Judah, the land given to Judah. It was not saying this is merely the tribe of Judah, because there was always Judah, Benjamin, and the Levites. And also a smattering of people of the other tribes. There was no forbidden intermarriage between the tribes. It wasn't like if you're of Judah, you couldn't marry someone of Issachar. Oh, God bless you. You could marry someone of any tribe of Israel. Ask a Jew if there's some, is it taboo for someone of Judah to marry someone of Benjamin? There is a, I don't know how they calculate where you fall then. Is it your mother, your father? Which tribe do you belong to? Because it does seem to be like an all or nothing proposal, doesn't it? I never seen. He was half of the tribe of Judah, half of the tribe of Issachar. I never hear that. So it was a political distinction. The 10 tribes in the north is also a political distinction, and they were called Israel in the north, which is definitely a political distinction because the south was also Israel, but it had to do with the civil war and the conflict between them, right? Well, I think that they abode without all these things in captivity, and that some of the children of Israel returned to the Lord, as was promised. Now it said, though, you will be left few in number among the heathen, whether you be scattered, till you be consumed. And it was for the sins of the things they committed that they were consumed, and just a small number returned. In the analogy, Hosea's whole wife returns, but she is somewhat diminished, not as grand and great as she was in her youth. And so Israel returns to God, right? But not just God, to David, their king. So in Israel's return, they do not return as the nation, as the 10 tribes of the north. After the 10 tribes are destroyed by the Assyrian, only a very small remnant returns, and it's not even really recorded except in the prophets promising it, and also in the fact that in the New Testament you do see people of other tribes, which either were already pre-existing with Judah, meaning they were already living in the tribe of Judah at the split, or they were remnants who returned from Assyria, or refugees from the Assyrian invasion. There would be both. They would return and seek the Lord and David their king, because there would no longer be a northern political entity to look to. And that was so. So all the Jews who returned to the Lord after the captivities looked to the house of David. Actually, the first captivity, they would of necessity have to look to the house of David after the first captivity, because after the second captivity, the house of David was destroyed. At least not destroyed as a lineage, but as a political entity. After the Babylonian captivity, the line of David did not rule, though they were led by people who were descendants of David very often, but the kingdom was ended. And that's why at the time of Jesus, they looked at Jesus, thou son of David. And when he left in the book of Acts, Peter says to him, when he ascended to heaven, he says, or just before, wilt thou at this time restore the kingdom to Israel? And to him, he means Judah and all the Jews. Because there's another thing you need to know about that political division. It ended after the captivity. After the first captivity of Assyria, there was no more division of Israel and Judah. There was just the Jews. That doesn't mean there wasn't a remnant of Israel included with that in that unity. And the evidence of this is also true in the New Testament. They refer to the Jews collectively as Israel because they are one again. There is no distinct separate tribe. People are always looking for the lost tribes. Anyone of the tribes who was truly lost was consumed among the heathen. Like those who were cast off as God promised. They were left few in number among the heathen until they were consumed. They were idolaters. They were wicked. But only the remnant who sought after the Lord their God did not wander north into Europe and become the Anglo-Saxon race. That's nonsense. It didn't happen. Because that was never a prophecy. You say, I got some. No. You will be left few in number among the heathen, whether you go to be captives. If from thence you will seek the Lord, you will find him. And when they seek the Lord, they also seek David their king, and then return to the kingdom. I said, in the New Testament, there is only the kingdom of David. There's only Israel. They refer to the Jews interchangeably as Israel and as Jews. Okay, they'll seek the Lord and David their king, and shall fear the Lord and his goodness. Now, my little beeper just beeped. Maybe it got cut off already. I don't know. But I've still got 2 minutes. I want to finish this verse because that will bring us perfectly to the end of chapter 3. We can be in chapter 4 tomorrow. Or maybe what I corrected with my stream is now working. Here's the part. I can't tell from here, so I don't know. So if it's cut off again, I'll be re-uploading it. Hopefully not. I'm getting sick of that. I got like a gazillion videos with like several views here and several there. I want to cut my losses and move forward. But the idea of always losing, I don't care about views. It doesn't matter. But whatever. But the idea of putting up 0 view videos is kind of depressing. It's like I get at least 1 or 2 each time, right? Re-uploading them and deleting the live stream where some people were watching, But you see a big fat goose egg, it is sort of like, it's like, hey, I don't do this for 0 people. I do it for at least 1. At least 1, and for everyone else, of course, but at least 1, right? Nobody likes to speak to the air. That's a bit too much. And it's not cool to have it look like it's speaking to the air. Anyways, let's finish this up. Fear the Lord and his goodness. I like that. I fear the Lord's goodness. I could go on. I could make a whole hour on that subject alone. And I know you don't doubt it. There's easy ways to think. Why would you fear God's goodness? For the sake of God's goodness, to be good to me. Because partly, let's just start with this. He gave them blessings. He gave them corn and wine and oil, and they attributed it to their gods, to other gods. They didn't see God's goodness as being from God. They did not properly attribute it to him and fear the one who could take it away. Right? But I also see another angle where, if you are sons and God is good, like she played the harlot and her husband is good. a good man. Well, he might put her away. You know? That's what happened with, Joseph. He was a good man, and he was mindful to put her away. Mary, when she had conceived Christ, he thought, I'll put her away quietly, not to make a spectacle of her. In those days, sometimes it was, maybe preferable to be stoned. Because having a child out of wedlock as a woman in those days without a husband to support you was a tremendous hardship. Your family wouldn't be happy with you, etc., etc., etc. A girl like that could be in big trouble, especially in those days. They didn't have I'll just go to I'll go down to the welfare office or whatever, and they'll help me out. They'll give me housing, they'll give me food, and I'll go to the hospital and I'll have medical coverage, etc., etc. The goodness of God can lead him to chastise us. If you are beloved sons of the Lord and you go astray, he may chastise you because he's good. Because he's good and he wants you to be good. You know what I mean? And so out of his love for you, he will suffer things to happen to you which you may not enjoy. I would rather obey God with my conscious mind than have to have him teach me through some difficult experience. You know what I mean? It's not easy necessarily. Like to say, I want to learn to be patient, and I consciously want to be patient. That's good, because if I don't do that, then God might just throw trying circumstance after trying circumstance at me until I learn to be patient. If he wants me to be patient and I'm not mindful of it, you know what I mean? I can just find circumstance after circumstance thrown at me. All kinds of things I might be out of the way, and God in his goodness is like, I can't have that. I can't have my son turning out like a degenerate. I've got to be good and correct him. Set him on the right path. So God's goodness can be taken away, but also out of his goodness, he can give us blessings that we don't necessarily find to seem pleasant for the time being. At the moment it may seem uncomfortable, difficult. We may go things we don't immediately appreciate. We don't have an immediate appreciation of how good God is being towards us. We know only the momentary difficulty for what it is, and that's And so there's I could just go on and on though, as far as God's goodness is to be feared. And fear means in the sense of respect. I always use the analogy of down power lines, because I've seen down power lines, and they're frightening. It's fearful. It's not that I cower in my basement, but I'm keep my distance. I don't want to get too close to it. And I look at it and I say, that could kill me. I know that instinctively. As I say, go, zone, zone, it makes this really deep, loud noise with this bright white flash of light as the two wires touch and burn each other off. It was frightening, but not so frightening. I didn't start dealing with the problem. You know what I mean? Or that I wouldn't get within a certain range of it. I'd go up and I had to deal with the problem, but I feared. I didn't just walk up and hey, what's this, boop? And touch it, just a complete not thinking. No, I feared that thing, and God is, but also right. Electricity is good. All that power. It powers all the electricity. It powers this computer. It powers the satellite that shoots the thing up there. It powers the fans, the air conditioning, the heat. It powers all my tools. It powers everything. It powers the stove that makes this food. It's power that blesses. right? The power is good. But it's to be feared and respected. It's a good thing that we got to have respect for. It can go away. Not only that, it can be very dangerous. We can learn hard lessons, you know. If I don't respect the power, I could touch the wrong wires and get a nice little shock, right? At least, thankfully down, we're talking about, an outlet. We're not going to talk about something that's necessarily going to like put me down for good, necessarily. Though every outlet is a little dangerous, Anyways, so goodness is to be feared. The goodness of God. And the goodness of her husband to be feared. He bought me back. He loved me. You shall be for me and not for another. I will also be for you. He's good. He bought her back. Now she needs to fear him. And in his goodness. I mean, give him the respect. Respect that those orders. You're for me. And also we ought to respect God. In Christianity, we're betrothed to Christ. When he comes, we need to be faithful. Oddly enough, there's this whole it seems like, there's a second chance. In the story, yes, there is. And we get second chances in life, so to speak, because we live our lives and sometimes we find Christ later, or we don't understand, or we have some ignorance. God winks at our ignorance from time to time, and he knows our frame. But there is a certain level at which, and time in which, and place and stuff, where we can find ourselves out of time. We're at the end of the line, and it's at the judgment. And at the judgment, there's no go back and do it over. We have this life. This is our chance. The people of Israel who returned were not necessarily the same ones who left. They were the ones who went. They were little children going with their parents, and they heard their parents lament, if only we had heeded the words of the prophets, if only we had listened to the words of God. And the children grew up and thought, I'll go back to the God of my fathers, to the King which God anointed. And for us, that's Christ. So let us be faithful to him. I will pick this up tomorrow in chapter 4. Thanks for joining me in this study. Look forward to studying with you tomorrow.
The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he